Have you ever felt something was wrong, even before anything actually happened? Have you ever looked around your workplace and noticed a strange silence, like everyone knew something, except you? And what would you do if one day you realized your job was over, not because of a conversation, not because of a mistake you understood, but because of a cold, silent email sent by someone sitting just a few feet away from you? Would you stand up and ask why? Or would you sit there, frozen, pretending everything was still normal while your world quietly collapsed? I never thought something like that would happen to me. I believed in hard work. I believed in loyalty. And most of all, I believed that if you showed up every day, did your job well, and treated people with respect, then at the very least, you deserved honesty in return. But that belief was about to be tested in a way I could never have imagined. It started like any other morning. The alarm rang at 6:30. I didn't hit snooze. I never did. I had trained myself to wake up immediately, as if discipline alone could protect me from failure. The sunlight slipped quietly through the curtains, soft and warm, like it always did. There was nothing unusual, nothing that warned me that this day would be different. I made coffee, black, no sugar. I liked the bitterness. It reminded me that life wasn't supposed to be easy, and that was okay. While the coffee brewed, I checked my phone. A few emails, some notifications, nothing urgent, nothing important. At least, that's what I thought. By 7:30, I was out the door. Same route, same traffic lights, and same people crossing the street at the same corner. Everything was predictable, comfortably predictable. I had been working at the company for almost 4 years. Not a startup anymore, but not quite a big corporation either. Somewhere in between. The kind of place where people said things like, "We're a family," but still expected you to prove your worth every single day. And I did. Every day. I wasn't the smartest person in the room. I knew that. But I was consistent, reliable. The one people went to when something needed to be done, and done right. Or at least, that's what I believed. When I arrived at the office, something felt slightly off. Not wrong, just different. The receptionist smiled, but it felt a little forced. Two coworkers who usually joked loudly near the entrance were quiet. One of them glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I noticed it, but I didn't think too much about it. Sometimes people just had bad mornings. I walked to my desk, second row from the window. Not the best seat, but not the worst either. And just 10 feet away from me was my boss. He was already there, typing, focused. He didn't look up when I arrived. That wasn't unusual. He was always busy. Still, I paused for a second, just a second. "Good morning," I said. He nodded slightly. No eye contact. "Morning." That was it. I sat down, turned on my computer, opened my email. Inbox, 17 unread messages. I started going through them, one by one. Routine tasks, updates. A reminder about a meeting in the afternoon, nothing unusual. But then, at 9:12 a.m., a new email appeared. Subject line, "Regarding your position." I stared at it. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe it was just a general announcement. But then I saw the sender, my boss, the same person sitting just a few feet away from me, still typing, still not looking up. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not yet, just confusion. Why would he email me about my position when I was right here? I could literally stand up, take 3 steps, and talk to him. So why an email? I didn't open it immediately. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew that once I read it, things would change, and I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I clicked on another email, then another, pretending everything was normal, pretending that subject line didn't exist. But it stayed there, unread, waiting, like a quiet storm, gathering strength. After a few minutes, I couldn't ignore it anymore. My hand moved slowly, almost reluctantly. I clicked. The email opened. Short, too short. Hey, my name. We regret to inform you that your position at the company has been terminated effective immediately. Please pack your belongings and coordinate with HR for the next steps. Thank you for your contributions. Best regards, boss's name. That was it. No explanation, no warning, no conversation, just a few sentences, cold, final. I read it once, then again, and again, as if the words might change, as if I had misunderstood something. But they didn't. Each time, they felt heavier, more real, more permanent. I slowly looked up. My boss was still there, 10 feet away, typing, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just ended my job, my routine, my sense of stability, with a simple click. I waited. Maybe he would come over. Maybe he would say something, anything, an explanation, an apology, a reason. But he didn't. Minutes passed. People around me continued working, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the normal sounds of a normal day, except it wasn't normal anymore. Not for me. I felt invisible, like I had already disappeared, but my body hadn't caught up yet. I checked the email again. Still there, still real, still telling me I no longer belonged here. I glanced around. Did anyone else know? Was that why they were acting strange this morning? Was I the only one who didn't see it coming? 1,000 questions filled my mind, but none of them had answers. Not yet. I looked at my desk, my coffee mug, my notebook, the small plant I had brought from home. 4 years of my life, reduced to a few objects. That suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. I had two choices. I could sit here, quietly, follow the email, pack my things, and leave without saying a word. Or I could stand up, walk those 10 feet, and ask the question that was burning inside me. Why? My heart started beating faster, not from fear, but from something else, something stronger, something that had been building quietly, beneath all the confusion, a need for clarity, a need for dignity. Because if this was really the end, then I wasn't going to let it end with silence. I pushed my chair back, slowly. The sound felt louder than usual. A few people glanced in my direction. I stood up. My legs felt steady, surprisingly steady. Step 1, step 2, step 3. 10 feet suddenly felt like a very long distance, and yet not long enough to prepare for what was coming next. He still hadn't looked up. Not yet. I stopped at the edge of his desk. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at him, waiting. And then, finally, he lifted his eyes. Our eyes met, and in that brief moment, I realized something that made everything even more confusing. He didn't look angry. He didn't look cold. He didn't even look surprised. He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. And that's when I knew this story was not as simple as it seemed. Did you get my email? He asked quietly. I held his gaze. Yes, I said. A pause, a heavy silence, hanging between us. And then I asked the only question that mattered. Why? He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. as if he had been expecting this moment, but still didn't know how to handle it. It's complicated, he said. Complicated. That word. The one people use when they don't want to tell the whole truth, or when the truth is too uncomfortable to say out loud. I didn't move. I didn't sit down. I didn't break eye contact. Then explain it to me, I said, because after 4 years, after all the late nights, after all the effort, I deserved more than just an email. And deep down, I had a feeling. This was only the beginning of something much bigger than I understood. He didn't answer immediately. That silence again. The same silence that had been following me since I walked into the office that morning. But now, it felt heavier, more personal. It's not something I can explain in one sentence, he said finally. I let out a small breath. Then don't use one sentence. He looked at me for a few seconds, as if he was deciding how much to tell me, or maybe how much I deserved to know. Let's sit down, he said. I glanced around. People were trying not to look at us, but I could feel it. The attention, the curiosity, the quiet awareness that something unusual was happening. I'd rather stand, I replied. Another pause. He nodded. Okay. He folded his hands together, a habit I had noticed before, usually when he was about to say something difficult. This wasn't my decision alone. He began, of course. It never is. Then whose decision was it? I asked. The board and senior management. That word again. Management. A vague group of invisible people who made decisions that changed lives without ever having to face the consequences directly. And what did I do? I asked. You didn't do anything wrong. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. So I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm still fired? He shifted slightly in his chair. It's not about performance, he said. Then what was it about? I felt frustration rising inside me, slowly, steadily. Then tell me what it is about, I said. He hesitated again, and that hesitation told me more than his words. It's about restructuring, he said. There it was, the word companies use when they want to make something harsh sound logical. Restructuring, a clean word, a professional word, a word that hides the human side of things. What does that mean for me? I asked. It means your role is no longer needed. No longer needed. 4 years. And suddenly, I was no longer needed. I nodded slowly. Since when? He looked down for a moment. This has been in discussion for a few weeks. A few weeks. So all this time, you knew? I asked. He didn't answer directly. That's why things have been different lately, he said. Different. Yes, the quiet conversations, the strange looks, the meetings I wasn't invited to. It all started to make sense. You could have told me, I said. My voice was calm, but underneath, there was something else, something sharper. I couldn't, he replied. Couldn't or didn't want to, I asked. He looked at me again. This is exactly why I didn't want to do this over email, he said. I blinked. And then why did you? I asked. Another pause, and then, for the first time, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Because HR insisted, he said quietly. HR, another invisible force, another layer between people and truth. They said it was the proper procedure, he added. Proper, I almost smiled. So the proper procedure is to fire someone by email while sitting 10 feet away from them, I asked. He didn't respond, because there was no good answer to that. I took a deep breath. Is that really all? I asked. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I mean, is this really just about restructuring? I said, because something didn't feel right. Something was missing, and I could see it in the way he avoided certain words, in the way he paused too long before answering. There's nothing else, he said, but his voice wasn't convincing. I stepped a little closer. Look at me, I said. He did. If I'm leaving today, then I want the truth, I continued. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even upset in that moment. I just wanted clarity, because uncertainty is worse than bad news. He exhaled slowly. There are concerns, he admitted. Concerns. What kind of concerns? I asked. He hesitated again, and this time, I knew. Whatever he was about to say, this was the real reason. There have been reports, he said carefully. My stomach tightened. Reports about what? About your communication with the team. I felt something shift inside me. Communication? What does that even mean? I asked. Some people feel that you've been difficult to work with, he said. Difficult. That word hit harder than I expected. Who? I asked immediately. I can't disclose that, he replied. Of course not. Anonymous feedback. The safest way to criticize someone without taking responsibility. In what way am I difficult? I asked. He rubbed his hands together. They feel that you're too direct, he said. Too direct. I repeated it in my head. They feel that you don't always consider how your words affect others. I stood there, processing it. Too direct. Was that true? Maybe. I believed in being honest, clear, efficient. I didn't like wasting time. But was that enough to lose my job? I do my job, I said. I solve problems. And you do it well, he admitted. Then what's the issue? I asked. The issue is not just what you do, he said. It's how people feel when working with you. Feelings. So this was about feelings. I let out a slow breath. So someone feels uncomfortable, and that's enough to end my job, I asked. It's not just one person, he said. How many? I pushed. He didn't answer, which meant enough. I looked away for a moment. The office suddenly felt different, smaller, colder. I thought about the late nights, the deadlines, the pressure, all the times I had pushed for better results, all the times I had pointed out mistakes, directly, without softening my words. I thought I was helping, but maybe not everyone saw it that way. Still, something didn't add up. If this has been going on for weeks, why didn't anyone talk to me? I asked. He hesitated again. We planned to, he said. Planned to. But we never got the chance. That didn't make sense. You see me every day, I said. I know, he replied. Then why didn't you say anything? I asked, because that was the real question. Not the email, not the restructuring, but the silence. Why was there silence when there should have been a conversation? He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something change in his expression, something honest, something unguarded. Because I thought it would get better, he said quietly. That answer caught me off guard. What? I asked. I thought you would adjust, he continued. I thought the team would adapt. And? I asked. And it didn't, he said. Another silence. But this time, it felt different, less defensive, more real. I nodded slowly. I wish you had told me, I said. So do I, he replied. And for the first time, it didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like regret. But regret doesn't change the outcome. I looked at the email again, still open on my screen, still telling me my time here was over. When do I have to leave? I asked. Today, he said. Of course, clean cut, no transition, no time to process, just done. I nodded. Okay. I turned back toward my desk. Each step felt heavier now, but also clearer. Because even though I didn't agree with everything, at least I understood more than I did before. Or at least, I thought I did. I sat down. My coffee was cold, untouched, just like everything else. That suddenly didn't matter anymore. I opened a box from under my desk, started placing things inside, slowly, carefully, as if the way I packed could somehow give meaning to the moment. A notebook, a pen, the small plant. I paused when I reached the plant. It had been with me for 2 years. Through good days, through stressful ones, it had grown little by little, just like I thought I had. I picked it up gently, and that's when I noticed something. A reflection on my computer screen. Someone standing behind me. I turned slightly. It was one of my coworkers. She looked nervous. Hey, she said softly. I waited, not sure what to expect. I heard, she continued. Of course she did. News travels fast. I'm sorry, she said. I nodded. Thanks. She hesitated, as if she wanted to say more. And then, she did. There's something you should know, she whispered. I looked at her. What? I asked. She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Then she leaned in slightly. It's not just about communication, she said. My chest tightened again. What do you mean? I asked. She swallowed. There was a meeting last week, she said. A meeting? Another one I wasn't invited to. And your name came up, she added. Of course it did. But not in the way you think. I felt my pulse quicken. Then how? I asked. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might stop. But then she said it. They think you know something, she whispered. I froze. Know something? What are you talking about? I asked. Her eyes met mine. And in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. This wasn't just about performance. This wasn't just about personality. This wasn't even just about restructuring. There's something going on, she said quietly. And somehow, you're in the middle of it. I stared at her, my mind racing, trying to connect the pieces, trying to understand what exactly I had just stepped into. Because whatever this was, it was bigger than me, and it was far from over. I didn't respond immediately, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't understand. They think I know something? I repeated slowly. My coworker nodded. Her expression was tense, cautious, as if even saying these words carried risk. Yes, she said. A strange feeling spread through me, confusion mixed with something sharper. What exactly do they think I know? I asked. She glanced around again. The office was still active, still normal, on the surface. But now, everything felt different. Every conversation, every glance, every quiet pause. I don't know everything, she said carefully, but I heard enough. I leaned slightly closer. Then tell me what you heard. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might change her mind. But then she took a breath and continued. It started about 2 weeks ago, she said. 2 weeks. That matched what my boss had said, the few weeks of discussions. There was a financial review, she continued. Financial. My mind immediately began searching for connections. And something didn't add up. I felt a subtle tension build in my chest. What didn't add up? I asked. Expenses, she said. Project budgets, reports, numbers that didn't match. Numbers. That was familiar territory because part of my job involved reviewing those same reports, not at the highest level, but enough to notice patterns, enough to ask questions. And suddenly, a memory surfaced, a late night, a spreadsheet open on my screen, a rows of numbers that didn't quite align, a small difference, easy to ignore, but I didn't. I remembered asking about it, casually, not accusing anyone, just pointing it out. I look back at her. I asked about some numbers last week, I said slowly. Her eyes widened, just slightly. Exactly, she said. A cold realization began to settle in. That's what this is about? I asked. She shook her head. Not just that, she said. Of course not. It was never just one thing. After that meeting, she continued, they started looking deeper, deeper, and they found more inconsistencies. My heart started beating faster, not from fear, not yet, but from the growing sense that I had unknowingly stepped into something serious. How serious? I asked. She lowered her voice even more. Is serious enough that legal got involved. Legal. That word changed everything. Because when legal gets involved, it's no longer just internal issues. It's risk. It's liability. It's something the company wants to control, quietly. And somehow, this connects to me? I asked. She nodded. They think you noticed something, she said. I did notice something, I replied, but I didn't know what it meant. That's the problem, she said. I frowned. How is that a problem? Because they don't know what you know, she explained. I stood there, trying to process it. So instead of asking me, I said slowly, they decided to remove me? She didn't answer directly, but her silence was enough. I leaned back slightly. This wasn't just frustrating anymore. This was something else, something deeper. They think I'm a risk, I said. Yes, she whispered. A strange calm came over me, the kind of calm that comes when confusion starts turning into clarity. So they fire me before I can say anything, I continued. She nodded again. And they do it quietly, I added. No explanation, no discussion, just an email. That way, she said, they stay in control of the situation. Control. Everything was about control. I looked down at the box on my desk, half packed. Half of my life here, already disconnected. And suddenly, it didn't feel like I was being removed because I was difficult. It felt like I was being removed because I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. Who else knows about this? I asked. Only a few people, she said. Senior management, legal, and your boss. Of course. I thought back to our conversation, the hesitation, the vague answers, the way he avoided certain details. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She hesitated, and then she said something that I didn't expect. Because it's not fair, she said. Fair, that word again. And for the first time that day, I felt something close to gratitude. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded. Just be careful, she added. Careful. I watched as she walked away, back to her desk, back to normal, as if nothing had happened. But for me, everything had changed. I turned back to my computer. The email was still open, still telling me to leave. But now, it meant something different. It wasn't just an ending, it was a move, a strategic move, and I had to decide how to respond. I sat down slowly, my mind racing, connecting pieces, replaying moments, the late night spreadsheet, the numbers that didn't match, the question I had asked, casually, without thinking twice. And now, This. I opened my email again, scrolled through my sent messages. There it was, the email I had sent a week ago. Subject: quick question about budget allocation. I clicked it, read it carefully. It was simple, professional, non accusatory. I had pointed out a discrepancy, asked for clarification. That was it. No accusations, no assumptions, just a question. And yet, that question had triggered something big enough to put me in this position. I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time, I asked myself a different question. Not, why was I fired? But, what exactly did I find? Because whatever it was, it mattered. A lot. I looked at the clock. 10:03 a.m. Still early. Still time. Time to think. Time to decide. I glanced toward my boss. He was still at his desk, still working. But now, I saw him differently. Not just as a manager, but as someone caught in the middle, between the company and the truth, between procedure and people. I stood up again, this time with a different purpose. I walked toward him, the same 10 feet, but now they felt shorter, clearer. He looked up as I approached. Yes, he asked. I held his gaze. I want to see the full report, I said. He frowned. What report? The financial review, I replied. His expression changed immediately, a subtle shift, but enough. That's not something I can share, he said. Why not? I asked. Because it's confidential. Of course it was. Everything important always is. I'm already being terminated, I said calmly. What difference does it make? It makes a difference, he replied. I stepped closer. This is about me now, I said. If I'm being removed because of something I saw, then I have the right to understand what that is. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw it again. That same discomfort, that same conflict. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be, he said. No, I replied. I'm making it clear. A silence fell between us. Different from before, not uncertain, but tense, focused. You don't want to go down this path, he said quietly. That sentence. It wasn't a warning. It was something else. And a suggestion, or maybe advice? I held his gaze. I think I already have, I said. He leaned back slowly, studying me, as if trying to decide whether I was serious. I didn't look away, because now, this wasn't just about losing a job. This was about understanding the truth. And once you start asking those questions, it's hard to stop. Finally, he spoke. There are things you don't understand, he said. Then help me understand, I replied. Another pause. And then he said something that changed everything again. They're not just worried about what you saw, he said. My chest tightened. Then what are they worried about? I asked. He looked at me carefully. They're worried about what you might do next. I felt a chill run through me because in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about the past, it was about the future, my future, and whatever decision I made next was going to matter a lot more than I had expected. They're worried about what you might do next. His words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed and stayed heavy, uncomfortable, real. For a moment, I didn't speak, because suddenly, this was no longer just about losing my job. It was about choice, my choice, and the consequences that would follow. What do you think I'm going to do? I asked finally. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me carefully, as if trying to read something beneath my words. That depends, he said. On what? I asked. On who you are. When this is over. That answer stayed with me, not because it was clear, but because it wasn't. Because it forced me to think, not about the company, not about the situation, but about myself. Who was I when everything familiar was taken away? Was I the kind of person who would walk away quietly, or the kind of person who would ask questions, even when the answers might cause more damage? I took a slow breath. I asked a question about numbers, I said. That's all I did. I know, he replied. Then why does this feel like something bigger? I asked. Because it did. It felt like I had stepped into something without realizing how deep it went. He leaned forward slightly. Because sometimes simple questions lead to complicated problems, he said. That was the closest thing to honesty he had given me so far. And what kind of problem is this? I asked. He hesitated, then looked away. And in that moment, I understood something important. He wasn't just protecting the company, he was protecting himself. We're trying to handle this internally, he said. Internally. Another clean word, another safe word. But I'm part of this, I replied. Not anymore, he said quietly. That sentence hit harder than anything else he had said, not because he was new, but because it was final. I wasn't part of this anymore, not part of the company, not part of the decisions, not part of the truth they were trying to control. And maybe that was exactly why they wanted me gone, because once you're outside, you're unpredictable. I nodded slowly. Let me ask you something, I said. He looked back at me. If I had never asked about those numbers, would I still be sitting at my desk right now? I asked. A pause, and a long one, and that pause was the answer. Yes, he admitted. There it was. Simple, clear, honest. Not about performance, not about communication, but about one moment, one question, one detail. That didn't make sense, and now everything made sense. You could have told me the truth, I said. I'm telling you now, he replied. Now doesn't change what happened, I said. No, he agreed. Another silence. But this one felt different. Not tense, just real. I looked at him, really looked. At the person I had worked with for 4 years, the person who had given me feedback, assigned me projects, trusted me, at least I thought he had. And now, he was the one sitting in front of me, asking me to walk away quietly. What would you do if you were me? I asked. The question surprised him. I could see it. He leaned back slightly, thinking carefully. I would let it go, he said. Of course he would. That was the safe answer. That's easy to say when you're not the one being removed, I replied. He nodded. You're right. At least he admitted that. But sometimes, letting go is the smarter choice, he added. Smarter. Maybe. Or maybe just easier. What happens if I don't? I asked. He didn't respond immediately, but I could see it in his face. The shift, the seriousness. That's where things get complicated, he said. Complicated again. But this time, it didn't sound vague. It sounded like a warning. Complicated how? I asked. He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. There are legal implications, he said. Legal, that word again. And I pushed. And if this becomes public, it won't just affect the company, he continued. It could affect a lot of people. A lot of people. That was the kind of phrase that tries to make you feel responsible for something you didn't create. I crossed my arms slightly. So I'm supposed to protect everyone by staying silent? I asked. That's not what I'm saying, he replied. Then what are you saying? I asked. He paused, choosing his words. I'm saying, think carefully about what you want, he said. What I wanted. That was the question. Not what they wanted, not what was easier, but what I wanted. I stepped back slightly, creating space, not just physically, but mentally, because I needed it. I needed to think, to process, to decide. I returned to my desk, sat down, looked at the box again, still half full, still waiting, just like my decision. I picked up my phone, opened my messages, scrolled through old conversations, friends, family, people who knew me outside of this place, outside of this situation. And I asked myself, what would they expect me to do? But more importantly, what would I expect from myself? Because at the end of the day, this wasn't about the company. It wasn't about my boss. It wasn't even about the mistake or whatever was hidden behind those numbers. It was about something else, something quieter, but stronger: integrity. The word felt heavy, but clear, because I knew one thing. If I walked away without understanding the truth, that question would stay with me long after this job was gone, long after this moment passed. And maybe that was something I wasn't willing to carry. I looked at the screen again, at the email I had sent, at the question that had started everything, and I realized something. I still had access, not forever, but for now. And sometimes a small window is all you need. I opened the internal system, navigated through the folders, reports, budgets, financial summaries, the same place I had been before, the same place where I had noticed that small inconsistency. But this time, I wasn't just looking, I was searching, carefully, quietly, because now I knew what I was looking for: patterns, connections, something that didn't make sense, something that shouldn't be there. Minutes passed, then more. The office noise faded into the background because my focus was somewhere else. And then I saw it. Not obvious, not dramatic, but clear. A repeated adjustment across multiple reports, small amounts, individually insignificant, but together, they formed a pattern that shouldn't exist. I felt my heartbeat quicken, because now, this wasn't just a suspicion. It was something real, something measurable, something that could be proven. And that's when I understood why they were worried. Because this wasn't just an error, it was intentional. I leaned back slowly, staring at the screen, at the numbers, at the truth, hiding in plain sight. And for the first time, I felt something stronger than confusion, stronger than frustration: clarity. But clarity comes with responsibility, because once you see something clearly, you can't pretend you didn't. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, I knew one thing: whatever I did next would define everything that came after. I glanced toward my boss. He was watching me, not obviously, but enough, as if he knew that something had changed. And he was right, because it had. I stood up, this time, not with hesitation, but with certainty. The 10 feet between us no longer felt long at all. I stopped at his desk. He looked up, concern in his eyes. I think I understand now, I said. His expression tightened. Understand what? He asked. I held his gaze. The reason, I replied. A silence followed, heavy, expectant, and then I said something that neither of us could take back. This isn't a mistake, I said quietly. It's a pattern. His face changed, just for a second, but enough to confirm everything. And in that moment, I realized something else. This wasn't over, not even close. This isn't a mistake. It's a pattern. The moment those words left my mouth, everything shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a quiet, irreversible way. My boss didn't respond right away. He didn't deny it. He didn't ask me what I meant. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I held his gaze, waiting, not for an explanation, but for honesty. Because at this point, the truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was just unspoken. You shouldn't have looked deeper, he said finally. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something heavier. That's not an answer, I replied. It's the only one I can give you, he said. I let out a slow breath because I understood now, not just the situation, but him. He wasn't going to confirm it. He wasn't going to explain it. He wasn't going to help me take this any further because his role was to contain it, and mine was already over. Or at least, that's what they wanted. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. That seemed to surprise him. Maybe he expected an argument, maybe he expected resistance. But I wasn't reacting anymore. I was deciding. And there's a difference. I stepped back, not away from the situation, but into myself. Because now, everything was clear. There was a pattern in the reports. There was awareness at the top. There was a quiet effort to control the situation. And there was me, someone who had seen just enough to become a problem, even if I never meant to. I returned to my desk, sat down slowly. The box was still there, waiting. But now, it felt like something else. Not an ending, but a choice. I looked at the items inside, the notebook, the pen, the small plant. 4 years of routine, 4 years of effort, 4 years of believing that doing things right was enough. I picked up the plant again, held it for a moment, then placed it gently into the box. And as I did, I realized something. This situation wasn't just about them, it was about me, about the kind of person I wanted to be after this moment. Because moments like this, they don't just test your patience, they test your values, your limits, your identity. I looked at my computer screen one more time, at the reports, at the numbers, at the pattern that wasn't supposed to exist. I could take a screenshot, save the files, send them somewhere. I could. The opportunity was there, right in front of me. And for a brief moment, I considered it. Not out of revenge, but out of justice. Because if something was wrong, shouldn't it be exposed? Shouldn't someone do something? But then, another thought came, a quieter one. What happens next? Not just to them, but to me. Because once you take that step, there's no going back. You don't just reveal the truth, you become part of it. Part of the conflict, part of the consequences. Legal, professional, personal, and suddenly, the situation became bigger than right or wrong. It became about responsibility and risk. I closed the report, not because I didn't care, but because I understood something important. There are battles you fight and battles you walk away from. Not because you're weak, but because you choose where your energy goes and what kind of future you want to build. I turned off my screen. The reflection stared back at me, calm, tired, but clear. I stood up, picked up the box. It was lighter than I expected, or maybe I was stronger than I thought. I walked past my desk, past the people who avoided eye contact, past the space that had been part of my daily life for years, and toward the exit. Each step felt real, final, but not heavy, not anymore, just certain. As I reached the door, I stopped. Not because I had doubts, but because I wanted one last moment. not with the company, not with the situation, but with myself, to recognize what this really was. Not a failure, not a loss, but a turning point. Because sometimes life doesn't push you forward gently. Sometimes it removes everything familiar. So you have no choice but to move. I stepped outside. The air felt different, lighter, or maybe I was. My phone buzzed. A message from my boss. I hesitated for a second, then opened it. I'm sorry it ended this way. I looked at the words, simple, late, but honest. I typed a reply, paused, then deleted it. Because some things don't need a response. I put my phone away and started walking. No plan, no clear direction, just forward. Because that was enough. And as I walked, I thought about everything that had happened: the email, the conversation, the truth behind the silence, and I realized something that stayed with me. In life, you won't always get fairness, you won't always get explanations, and you definitely won't always get closure the way you expect. But you will always get a choice in how you respond, a choice in what you carry forward, a choice in who you become after the moment passes. And sometimes that choice matters more than anything else. I didn't expose the truth. I didn't fight. I didn't stay. I walked away. Not because I was afraid, but because I understood something deeper. My future was bigger than this moment, bigger than this company, bigger than this problem, and I wasn't going to let one situation define everything that came next. Weeks later, I would still think about that day, about the email, about the 10 feet between me and my boss, about how something so small could change everything. But I would also remember something else: the moment I chose who I wanted to be, and that made all the difference. So if you ever find yourself in a moment like this, where things don't make sense, where people don't give you answers, where life feels unfair, remember this: you may not control what happens to you, but you always control what you do next. And sometimes, walking away is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better one. Thank you for listening. If this story made you think or reminded you of something in your own life, take a moment to reflect on it. And if you want to keep improving your English through real, meaningful stories like this, stay with us. Because sometimes the best lessons in language come from the moments that change us.